Welcome to the Diabetes Revolution podcast with Dr. Sarah Townley, the type 2 diabetes coach, clinical pharmacist, and mom of 7 angels. You don't have to struggle and fight with your blood sugars for the rest of your life. I'm here to teach you the skills you need to control and even reverse this disease. There is such a thing as getting off your meds and creating a future free from diabetes. And you can have it too. Let's get down to business. What is up, you guys? Is that too much energy for you? I always feel like I should jump on this podcast and just be so alive, but maybe that's not the mood you're in, you know? I was in a bad mood yesterday. Just telling you guys, it takes us about 2 hours of driving to get to church every Sunday. And, you know, trying to fill up our van with 7 kids, it's not pretty. And sometimes by the time I get to church, I'm just like pissed off. Like yesterday, I got out of the van and everybody was covered in chocolate. Somebody gave these kids chocolate to eat in the van for breakfast. Like, what the heck? And it was everywhere. There was chocolate all over like 3 different blankets and kids' bodies and faces, and I was just mad. But what in the world? Oh yeah, so I was mad. And I went into church and I just allowed myself to not smile until I wanted to, you know? Like, why do we need to pretend like we're happy and cheerful when we're not? So I'm just going to meet you where you're at right now, whatever mood you're at right now. It's all good. We're going to learn some awesome stuff today, you and me together. And by the time we're done, you'll be feeling a little bit more inspired, a little bit more informed, and you'll probably go out and take some awesome action, with or without a smile, right? Well, today I want to talk to you about a topic called ketosis. And you know, when I first thought of this topic, I was like, oh yeah, this is just really quick and easy. Not a whole lot to it, but as is normal for me, when I start getting into what I know, there's just a lot. So I'm going to share with you some stuff that will probably make a big difference to you in knowing this versus not knowing this and deciding how you want to take care of your body. So today I want to explain to you the difference between ketosis or nutritional ketosis, which is where you achieve a state of ketosis using your food and how you eat, versus diabetic ketoacidosis, which is terrifying and life-threatening and a medical emergency. And many of you have heard that ketosis is bad because of what happens when you're in diabetic ketoacidosis. And so I really want to make sure that I clear all of that confusion up because it's not useful to think of nutritional ketosis as dangerous. It's actually a wonderfully healing state. And I want to talk to you more about that and all of the different ways that that's true because it's going to make a big difference for you in thinking about how you want to take care of your body. So let's just start at the most basic point, which is what is nutritional ketosis and how is it different from diabetic ketoacidosis? And I'm going to make this really simple for you. I love making things simple. I love thinking about things when we're talking about the human body, very grounded in how our bodies are designed, which is related to how they evolved on the earth, right? We're talking hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. Yeah, your body is a product of 200 plus thousand years of refinement and attunement to this natural habitat that we live in, which now the way we live doesn't really resemble at all how we lived as we evolved over the last 200,000 years. But let's just talk about ketosis in the context of this. So ketosis, when I talk about ketosis, I'm talking about nutritional ketosis. This is a natural human state, okay? It is basically boiling down to a metabolic state where you are using ketones as your primary fuel source. That means you are burning fat as your primary fuel source. When we are burning body fat or burning dietary fat, we break it down into its building block, and that is the ketone bodies. There's a couple different ones. Beta hydroxybutyrate is one, acetoacetate is one, but basically these are just the fuel currency of the body that we burn fat in. And why might we want to be in this? Well, we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I want to just make sure I define it for you so that it's very clear what it is and how it's different from diabetic ketoacidosis. So we get into a state of nutritional ketosis, meaning that we're burning fat for fuel, which sounds good, right? Like if you're trying to burn body fat, like the only way to get rid of your body fat is to burn it, or I guess to have it liposuctioned off your body. But most of us are trying to burn our body fat. And if you want to burn body fat for fuel, which by the way, all of the organs in your body pretty much can burn fat for fuel instead of glucose, which is the other main fuel source that most of us have really been relying on for all of our energy for a long time. Before you can burn fat for fuel, you're going to need to break it down into its usable form, which is called the ketone body. So that's what ketosis means. Now, how is it different from ketoacidosis? So let's look at what's happening in the body when it's in nutritional ketosis. Your body has two ways that it can get energy, either from glucose, which is, blood glucose is what you check when you check your blood sugar, or ketones, which is coming from some form of dietary fat or body fat. So your body generally likes to stay burning glucose, or what we call sugar burner, if it doesn't have to tap into your fat stores, okay? So it's going to be relying on you feeding it some form of glucose, whether it's potatoes and starches, or it's sugar or vegetables of some sort. Your body will turn all of those into glucose, and if it can, it will continually be burning glucose. And when you are eating forms of carbohydrate that get turned into glucose pretty much every day, you're going to be storing some of that glucose in the form of glycogen. So glycogen is just the storage form of glucose. It's these big molecules of glucose that we can stash in our liver and in our muscle tissue. And if you're not eating, your body will be burning through its glycogen stores, releasing glucose into the bloodstream regularly just to keep things going while you're not eating. Now, your body will not want to tap into its body fat stores and start burning body fat if it doesn't have to, if it can rely on your glycogen and your glucose stores, and that's what it's going to do. So in order to move your body into nutritional ketosis, you're going to have to pretty much run down or burn through all of your glucose stores or your glycogen stores, okay? And your glycogen stores take about 24 hours to completely burn through if you are at max capacity. So we can store about 1,700 or 2,000 calories of glucose in the form of glycogen. And if you don't eat anything, or if you just eat very minimal amounts of carbohydrate, it will take your body about 24 hours to burn completely through all of your glucose stores. So as you get low on your glucose stores that are, by the way, in the form of glycogen, remember, your body is going to start to look for its additional energy storage, and that's in your body fat, okay? So when your body is switching over from glucose and into its fat stores, that's when you start to see the levels of ketones in the blood rise. And when you are able to achieve a certain amount of ketones from your body fat or from dietary fat, if you're eating a lot of fat and no carbs in your diet, if you're able to get those levels of ketones up enough, you can say that you're in nutritional ketosis, that your body is burning primarily fat for fuel. Now, if you were to measure in your bloodstream the amount of ketone bodies, you would be able to see yourself in ketosis when those levels are over 0.5 millimoles, okay? Now, this is happening in a natural, healthy human body that is simply restricting its form of glucose for fuel and instead relying on body fat or dietary fat for its fuel. So there is plenty of insulin around. This is not in a state of insulin deficiency, and that's in stark contrast to diabetic ketoacidosis that we're going to talk about here in a second. But in this state of nutritional ketosis, there is plenty of insulin around and available to use. We just don't need a lot of it. The requirement for insulin is very low because we're not eating a lot of carbohydrate. And you're going to see your blood sugars look very normal or low normal in a state of nutritional ketosis. Okay, so we're looking at very pretty numbers. For those of you who are type 2 diabetic, those are going to look a lot better than they normally do when you're in a state of nutritional ketosis. Now, to get a little technical, in this state, your body's pH is going to be normal. So that would be somewhere around 7.36, okay? So there's no acidity going on. Now, that's important to remember because we're about to talk about diabetic ketoacidosis, okay? So let's define that. Diabetic ketoacidosis is a condition that develops when there is no insulin around. We normally see this in type 1s who are truly insulin deficient. There's no insulin around. So let's think about this. If your body needs insulin to use glucose for fuel, but there is no insulin around, how is it going to get energy? Well, it doesn't really have any recourse but to start burning a lot of body fat. And we're talking way, way more than what happens in nutritional ketosis. So if you were to measure those blood ketone levels, you're going to see them 10 times or 20 times higher than what you would ever see in nutritional ketosis. Remember we said about 0.5 over in the nutritional ketosis, and that can even get up into the 2s if you're really, really restricting carbohydrates and even exercising in that state. You would see in diabetic ketoacidosis ketone levels of 10, 20, and even 30 millimoles. So much, much higher. And remember, this is also in the state of hyperglycemia. So you're looking at blood sugar levels at the same time as ketones being sky high, being over 300 at the minimum, and even as high as 1,000. Okay, so when you have both of those going on, there's some really distorted things that happen to the human body. Not only is your pH going to get super acidic from all those ketones, that means your pH is going to be dropping, and this is life-threatening, but you're also going to be having some severe dehydration and electrolyte disturbances going on when the blood sugar is super, super high at the same time. And this feels terrible, by the way. So if you are going to have early signs of diabetic ketoacidosis, it's going to be, of course, thirst and urination like you see with hyperglycemia, but then you're going to start seeing things like abdominal pain and nausea and vomiting, and then that progresses to mental state changes like confusion and grogginess. And if untreated, this will progress until death. Like you have to have medical intervention in this state. But it's a very different situation than what we're talking about when we're talking about nutritional ketosis, because nutritional ketosis is a healthy state. Okay, we're going to talk about all the benefits of that. But I want to tie this back to how we evolved on the planet, because when people tell me that ketosis is dangerous, I laugh out loud. Like, we are born in ketosis. Think about that. Human babies are born in ketosis, and they are in a state of mild ketosis if they're exclusively breastfed babies because of how they convert the breast milk energy in their body to use as fuel. So how in the world is it possible that ketosis is dangerous or bad for your body when this is the preferred human condition when we're born and as an infant? And then think about this. Think about the human natural habitat as we evolved in history over hundreds of thousands of years. We were living in all kinds of different climates, all kinds of different locations. We had seasons, right? And what did we eat? We were eating primarily a carnivore diet for many seasons of the year because it simply was our only energy source. And it's also going to contain the kind of dense caloric energy supply that is necessary for our big brains to evolve and function. Like if you think about it, at rest, our brain is burning 20% of our basal metabolic rate. It's a very high energy demand organ, and the human body had to eat meat and fat, animal fat, in order to supply and support the energy demand of our big Homo sapien brain. And so we evolved eating a lot of animal fats and animal proteins in order to survive in many parts of the world, and especially in seasons like winter where we weren't able to gather, as a hunter-gatherer, we weren't able to gather enough carbohydrates to keep us out of ketosis. And so I just want to invite you to consider, how is it possible that ketosis would be harmful to us when our bodies are literally designed for it? Like it is a natural human condition to be in nutritional ketosis. So I hope that that gives you a little or a lot more comfort around considering nutritional ketosis before I start telling you about all of the benefits that come with it. So let's look at that. Well, for a person who's able to easily, seamlessly burn their own body fat for fuel, you're probably going to notice that you have consistent energy, right? Your energy level is not dependent on you eating meals at breakfast, lunch, and dinner because you've got, endless numbers of meals stored on your body in the form of body fat, and your body can tap into that and burn that as needed when you're not eating food, like when you're fasting or in between meals. So that means you're going to get consistent energy. And what's really cool is that fat is way more energy dense than carbohydrates would be, or food would be in the form of carbohydrate. So what I'm saying to you is that you're actually going to yield way more energy from burning fat than you would from burning glucose as the primary fuel source. So what does that translate to? That translates for most of us to increased energy. Not only is it consistent, but you have more energy. And you're also going to have more mental clarity and concentration. That's another really cool side effect of being in ketosis, because if you're burning ketone bodies in your brain for fuel, those are way richer in energy, or the currency is actually called ATP. That's like the molecule that translates to energy in our body. You're going to get way more ATP from a ketone body than you are from a glucose molecule. And so your brain's just getting a lot more energy than it normally does. And with that energy, it can focus and it can think a lot clearer than what you would notice if you were a sugar burner. So being in ketosis and having that consistent energy that's right there and available readily for you is also going to do some things to your hunger. Well, your hunger is going to change quality because it's not going to be near as intense or urgent when you can easily get to an abundant energy source like body fat. So if you're a sugar burner, your hunger is going to be pretty extreme. It's going to feel terrible and consume all of your attention and feel pretty urgent because your body literally is screaming at you to go get some energy because it doesn't have any. And it doesn't know how to tap into its fat stores because you've taught it to always be burning sugar. That's what I mean when I say sugar burner. And so when you're a fat adapted individual in ketosis, your hunger is just going to be a lot less insistent. It's going to be more of like an annoyance, just kind of like a strong reminder, but nothing like what you would experience if you were a sugar burner. And that also can translate to some appetite suppression and just not a very big appetite when you're in nutritional ketosis. Now, another really cool thing that can happen with ketones is that they're actually anti-inflammatory. So for people in nutritional ketosis that have an autoimmune disease or like osteoarthritis, which is where their joints are swollen, inflamed, and painful, they might notice that their inflammation and their pain level just really goes down when they're in nutritional ketosis. And that's just a product of those ketones being anti-inflammatory. This is all sounding pretty good, right? Like maybe we should think more about being in ketosis. Like not only is it how we evolved in a natural state, but it has some pretty strong advantages. So I want to take a second to talk about a few topics around this that you might be curious about. One of them is important, I think, is just a safety thing. And as a pharmacist, I really like to give you valuable information around medications. And there is a group of medications out there called SGLT2 inhibitors, okay? The way that you would identify if one of your medications was in this category of drugs is to look at the name of that drug. The generic name is going to end in flozin, empagliflozin or canagliflozin or something like that. The brands of these are things like Invokana, Jardiance, Farxiga, and they also come in different combos with metformin under different brand names. But those drugs, the SGLT2 inhibitors, are associated with an increased risk of diabetic ketoacidosis, even when blood sugars appear within the normal range. This is a really weird thing that these drugs can do. And there's even a black box warning for these drugs because of this and many other actually side effects. And so I just want to, throw that out there and give you that little tidbit that if you're a person listening to this podcast worried about DKA and you've been on a SGLT2 inhibitor, you may have even been warned about this. This is just a really weird side effect that's very rare, but can happen in people on these drugs, especially when they're getting off of insulin or decreasing their insulin dose, or they're moving to a low carb lifestyle, or they just have a weird event like dehydration or infection, okay? And it's just one of the black box warnings on these drugs. I'm not a big fan of these. They don't have a really big A1C lowering potential. Like we're talking half of a percentage point in the A1C. And they do come at quite an increased risk. So want to give you that information. So let's talk about something else called exogenous ketones. You may have heard people advising or recommending that you check out something called exogenous ketones to help you, quote, get into ketosis. And these are basically supplements that are ketones. They are immediately absorbed and increasing your blood ketone level. And it sounds like a good idea because if you're a person who, is interested in ketosis, this is in a highly attractive state to be in. You want to be in ketosis, right? Well, if these supplements can offer you the ability to get into ketosis easier or faster, that might sound like a good idea. But I want to use your logical mind real quick to explain this to you. If you are taking a ketone supplement to, quote, get into ketosis, it's not because you're burning your own body fat. And for most of us who are interested in nutritional ketosis, that's what we want. We want to be burning our own body fat, right? And so what advantage would there be to taking something that's increasing your ketone level? It's not going to reduce your insulin. It's not going to reduce your blood sugar level. And it's not going to mean you're burning fat from your body. You're just taking something else that is an energy source of ketones for your body. So I don't recommend these, but if they sound good to you, you sure can try them. You might see some of those increased energy or mental clarity effects of ketones, but I just recommend you try nutritional ketosis. Okay, now for some of you, you might be wondering, well, can I check my ketones? How do you do that? What about the urine strips? Are those better than like the blood meter? And so let's just answer that really quick. You can get urine ketone strips very easily and accessibly at your local pharmacy. You can just buy them outright. But they're only going to be measuring one type of ketone, and it's not the predominant one. It's called acetoacetate. And so it's only going to give you like a partial picture of whether or not you're in ketosis and how deeply you are able to achieve ketosis. And it gives you sort of this color-coded range to determine, are you in mild, medium, or high levels of ketosis. So it's more qualitative than quantitative, but it can be really helpful if you're just wanting to monitor for that, or if you're just curious about that and you're not using that information to make decisions. I happen to use a blood ketone meter, and the brand that I have purchased and used in the past is called Keto Mojo, and I have an Amazon affiliate link that I can put in the show notes if you want to check that out. But my Keto Mojo meter will measure both blood glucose, so it comes with test strips for your glucose, and your blood ketones, so different test strips for your ketones. And it's pretty accurate. It's measuring beta hydroxybutyrate, which is the predominant form of ketone bodies in the blood. And we're looking for levels to determine if we're in ketosis that are above 0.5 millimoles. And unless you are in, multi-day fast, water fast only, you're probably not going to ever see your numbers up above 3. I like to stay like between 1 and 2, and sometimes I can pop up over 2 if I'm on a multi-day fast. But in general, you're going to see your ketone level somewhere between 0.5 and 1.5. And that's healthy. That's good. You're going to see all the benefits. And I like to see that number because it actually motivates me. Like if I'm aware that I'm a fat burning machine, I ain't trying to mess that up. It's just kind of a fun thing that gets me a little bit more focused, more motivated, and keeps me taking action in the direction I want to go. So that's why I use my ketone meter. Okay. And then the last thing that I wanted to just mention is that this is all cool. Like I love knowing about ketosis. I love being in ketosis and using this as a tool. But what I really love more than anything is being metabolically flexible. Okay. What does that mean? Basically, all that means is that I can go in and out of ketosis with ease. I can switch from glucose to fat, vice versa, anytime I want, whatever's available, whatever my goals are. It's a very seamless transition. I can go in and out of ketosis without any trouble. And that to me is valuable. Like I like being able to be metabolically flexible like that. You also aren't going to see any of the keto flu type side effects when you're metabolically flexible as you go into ketosis, right? So no headache, no weakness, fatigue, or any of that stuff that you can notice if your body's just out of practice burning fat for fuel and needs to remember how to do that. I also like to be able to use this concept to break through plateaus, like weight loss plateaus. So I believe that the body responds well to confusion. When you are too consistent and too monotonous with your intervention, your body is so adaptive. It's so intelligent that it can pick up and start to anticipate and try to create what's called homeostasis or balance. The body always wants to create balance. So if something is perceived by your body as out of balance, like releasing body fat, right? It's going to try to compensate and create balance in some other way. And the body's infinitely adaptive. And so if you're metabolically flexible, you can refeed, or what people call carb cycle, refeed with some carbohydrate, some healthy, good sources of nutrition. We're not talking about ho-hos, right? And break your body's balance and kind of throw it for a loop so that when you go back into ketosis, it doesn't compensate and allows that body fat to be released with more ease or without so much resistance. And so I like that concept, metabolic flexibility, for that reason too. And then the last thing that comes to mind when I think about metabolic flexibility is that I can be consistently in a state of ketosis, but then sometimes just if I want to do a really intense workout or do something physically demanding, I can feed it some carbohydrate and it'll switch and fuel an intense workout with that and then go right back into ketosis if I don't overfeed, right? I only do like 15 to 30 grams of fruit or some kind of complex carb right before my workout. And then I can have an awesome workout where I just feel lots of energy and power without sacrificing my fat burning state that I like to stay in. Okay, so that's all about ketosis, and I'm hoping that answers all the questions you've ever had around ketosis. I personally feel that nutritional ketosis is an advantageous state to allow my body to be in. I feel great when I'm in ketosis. And that doesn't mean I don't want to ever eat carbohydrate. It just means I understand that I'm going to be switching out of fat burning mode when I eat carbohydrate and into fat storage mode. And that's okay if I want to do that, but it also isn't necessarily going to serve my long-term goals to do that regularly, whereas ketosis would. Okay, so that's what I've got for you today. At the minimum, I'm wanting to make sure I relieve any fear that you may have about ketosis being anything like diabetic ketoacidosis. They're nothing alike, right? And allow you to open your mind to the possibility that this might be something that would help you in achieving your health goals. Okay, and with that, I wish you an amazing day, and I will see you on the next podcast. Okay, don't leave yet. You're going to want to hear about this. If you love my podcast, if I'm the only sane voice you've found on this subject, if I've already helped you, you need to check out my online course. It's a start to finish, step-by-step video course that teaches you all the tools you need to know to beat this disease. You can find it on my website, sarahtownley.com. along with lots of other free tools that will make taking care of your diabetes so much easier. So get over there right now. See you there.